Overview.
Erickson is a person who coined the term identity crisis. I had no college degree of any kind, but this lack of formal training did not prevent me from gaining world fame in an impressive variety of fields including psychoanalysis, anthropology, psychohistory, and education. Well, I intended my theory of personality to extend rather than repudiate Freud's assumptions and to offer a new way of looking at things. My post-Freudian theory extended Freud's infantile developmental stages into adolescence, adulthood, and old age. I suggested that at each stage, a specific psychosocial struggle contributes to the formation of personality. From adolescence, that struggle takes the form of an identity crisis, in which a turning point in one's life that neither strengthen or weaken the personality. I regarded my post-Freudian theory as an extension of psychoanalysis, something Freud might have done in time. Although I used Freudian theory as the foundation for my life cycle approach to personality, it was different from Freud in several aspects or respects. In addition to elaborating the psychosexual stages beyond childhood, I placed more emphasis on both social and historical influence, and that's our difference of Freud. My post-Freudian theory, just like those other personality theories, is a reflection of my background, a background that included art, extensive travels, experiences with a variety of cultures, and a lifelong search for my own identity.
Biography.
I was born on June 15, 1902 in southern Germany. I was brought by my mother and stepfather, but I remained uncertain of the true identity of my biological father. To discover my niche in life, I ventured away from home during late adolescence, adopting the life of a wandering artist and poet. After nearly 7 years of drifting and searching, I returned home confused, exhausted, depressed, and unable to sketch or paint. And by that time, a 40th event changed my life. I received a letter from my friend Peter Bloss inviting me to teach children in a new school in Vienna. While undergoing analytic treatment from Anna Freud, I stressed that the most difficult problem for me was searching for the identity of my biological father. However, she said that I should stop fantasizing about my absent father. But I could not stop trying to learn my father's name. However, while in Vienna, I met and married Johan Serson, Canadian-born dancer, artist, and teacher who had also undergone psychoanalysis with the permission of Anna Freud. I have 4 children, 3 sons and 1 daughter. My 3 sons named Kai, John, and Neil, and my only daughter named Sue. Kai and Sue pursued important professional careers, but John, who shared my experience as a wandering artist, worked as a laborer and never felt emotionally close to us as his parents. I failed to take good care of my son Neil, who was born with Down syndrome. At the hospital, I agreed to place Neil in an isolation. Then when I went home and I told my 3 older children that their brother died at birth, I failed to understand that lying about Neil might later distress my other children. In America, I changed my name to Erickson. and continued my pattern of moving from place to place. During my California period, this is the period I gradually evolved a theory of personality. Through all the changes happened around me and in my life, I continued to seek my father's name. And I died May 12, 1994 at the age of 91.
Ego.
In contrast from Freud, I held that our ego is a positive force that creates a self-identity. During childhood, the ego is weak, playable, and fragile, but by adolescence, it should begin to take form and gain strength. The ego as a person's ability to unify experiences and actions in adaptive manner. There are three interrelated aspects of ego: the body ego, the ego identity, and ego ideal. The body ego refers to experiences with our body, a way of seeing our physical self as different from other people. We may be satisfied or dissatisfied with the way our body looks and function, but we recognize that it is the only body we will ever have. While the ego ideal represents the image we have of ourselves. In comparison with an established ideal, it is responsible for our being satisfied or dissatisfied, not only with our physical self, but with our entire personality identity. Ego identity, on the other hand, is the image we have of ourselves in the variety of social roles we play. Although adolescence is originally the time when these three components are changing most rapidly, alterations in body ego, ego ideal, and ego identity can and do take place at any stage of life.
Social and historical factors was in contrast with Freud's mostly biological viewpoint. The ego exists as potential at birth, but it must emerge from within a cultural environment. Different societies with their variations in child-rearing practices tend to shape personalities that fit the needs and values of their culture. Psychosocial development. Infancy is a time of incorporation. With infants, the taking in is not only through their mouth but through their various sense organs as well. Erickson's expanded view of infancy is expressed in the term oral sensory, a phase that includes infants' principal psychosexual mode of adapting. The oral sensory stage is characterized by two modes of incorporation. The first one is receiving and accepting what is given, and the implies of social context. Infants' most significant interpersonal relations are with their primary caregiver, ordinarily their mother. If they realize that their mother will provide food regularly, then they begin to learn basic trust. In contrast, they learn basic mistrust if they find no correspondence between their oral sensory needs and their environment. The inevitable clash between trust and mistrust results in people's first psychosocial crisis. If people successfully solve this crisis, they acquire their first basic strength, which is hope. Hope emerges from the conflict between trust and mistrust. Without the antithetical relationship between trust and mistrust, people cannot develop hope. Early childhood is a time of experiencing doubt and shame as children learn that many of their attempts at autonomy are unsuccessful. During the second year of life, children's primary psychosexual adjustment is the anal urethral muscular mode. At this time, children learn to control their body, especially in relation to cleanliness and mobility. Early childhood is more than a time of toilet training. It is also a time of learning to walk, run, hug parents, and hold on to toys and other objects. Early childhood is a time for self-expression and autonomy, and also a time for shame and doubt. Children should develop a proper ratio between autonomy and shame and doubt, and the ratio should be in favor of autonomy, the syntonic quality of early childhood. Children who develop too little autonomy will have difficulties in subsequent stages, lacking the basic strength of latter stages. Early childhood will be met with a strong sense of shame and doubt, setting up a serious psychosocial crisis. Shame is a feeling of self-consciousness, of being looked and exposed. Doubt, on the other hand, is the feeling of not being certain, the feeling that something remains hidden and cannot be seen. Both shame and doubt are dystonic qualities, and both grow out of the basic mistrust that was established in infancy. The basic strength will or willfulness evolves from the resolution of the crisis of autonomy versus shame and doubt. This step is the beginning of free will and willpower. Erickson's third stage of development is the play age. He believed that the Oedipus complex is one of several important developments during the play age. The primary psychosexual mode during the play age is genital locomotor. Erickson saw the Oedipal situation as a prototype of the lifelong power of human playfulness. In other words, the Oedipus complex is a drama played out in the children's imagination and includes the budding understanding of such basic concepts as reproduction, growth, future, and death. As children begin to move around more easily and vigorously, and as their genital interest awakens, they adopt an intrusive head-on mode of approaching the world. Although they begin to adopt initiative in their selection and pursuit of goals, many goals such as marrying their mother or father or leaving home must be either repressed or delayed. The consequence of this taboo and inhibited goals is guilt. The conflict between initiative and guilt becomes the dominant psychosocial crisis of the play age. The conflict of initiative versus guilt produces the basic strength of purpose. Children now play with a purpose, competing at games in order to win or to be on top. Erickson's concept of school age covers development from age 6 to approximately age 12 or 13 and matches the latency years of Freud's theory. At this age, the social world of children is expanding beyond family to include peers, teachers, and other adult models. Erickson agreed with Freud that school age is a period of psychosexual latency. Sexual latency is important because it allows children to divert their energies to learning the technology of their culture and the strategies of their social interactions. As children work and play to acquire these essentials, they begin to form a picture of themselves as competent or incompetent. Although school age is a period of little sexual development, it is a time of tremendous social growth. The psychosocial crisis of this stage is industry versus inferiority. Industry, a syntonic quality, means industriousness, a willingness to remain busy with something and to finish a job. If their work is insufficient to accomplish their goals, they acquire a sense of inferiority, the dystonic quality of the school age. From the conflict of industry versus inferiority, school-age children develop the basic strength of competence, the confidence to use one's physical and cognitive abilities to solve the problems that accompany school age. Competence lays the foundation for cooperative participation in productive adult life. Adolescence, the period from puberty to young adulthood, one of the most crucial developmental stages because by the end of this period, a person must gain a firm sense of ego identity. Puberty is defined as genital maturation, plays a relatively minor role in Erickson's concept of adolescence. The search for ego identity reaches a climax during adolescence as young people strive to find out who they are and who they are not. During adolescence, identity strengthens into a crisis as young people learn to cope with the psychosocial conflict of identity versus identity confusion. Identity is defined both positively and negatively, as adolescents are deciding what they want to become and what they believe while also discovering what they do not wish to be and what they do not believe. Often they must either repudiate the values of parents or reject those of the peer group, a dilemma that may intensify their role confusion. Role confusion is a syndrome of problems that includes a divided image. The basic strength emerging from adolescents' identity crisis is fidelity, or faith in one's ideology. After establishing their internal standards of conduct, adolescents are no longer in need of parental guidance, but have confidence in their own religious political, and social ideologies. The pathological counterpart of fidelity is role repudiation, the core pathology of adolescence that blocks one's ability to synthesize various self-images and values into a workable identity. After achieving a sense of identity during adolescence, people must acquire the ability to fuse that identity with the identity of another person while maintaining their sense of individuality. True genitality can develop only during young adult when it is distinguished by mutual trust and a stable sharing of sexual satisfactions with a loved person. It is a chief psychosexual accomplishment of young adult and exists only in an intimate relationship. Young adult is marked by the psychosocial crisis of intimacy versus isolation. Intimacy is the ability to fuse one's identity with another person without fear of losing it. The psychosocial counterpart to intimacy is isolation. It is defined as the incapacity to take chances with one's identity by sharing the two intimacy. Some people become financially or socially successful, yet retain a sense of isolation because they are unable to accept the adult responsibility of productive work, procreation, and mature love. Love, as the basic strength of young adulthood, emerges from the crisis of intimacy versus isolation. Erickson defined love as mature devotion that overcomes basic differences between men and women. The seventh stage of development is adulthood, that time when people begin to take their place in society and assume responsibility for whatever society produces. Procreativity refers to more than genital contact with an intimate partner. It includes assuming responsibility for the care of offspring that result from the sexual contact. The syntonic quality of adulthood is generativity, defined as a generation of new beings as well as new products and new ideas. Generativity, which is concerned with establishing and guiding the next generation, includes the procreation of children, the production of work, and the creation of new things and ideas that contribute to the building of a better world. The antithesis of generativity is stagnation. The generational cycle of productivity and creativity is crippled when people become too absorbed in themselves and too self-indulgent. The basic strength of adulthood is care, which arises from each earlier basic ego strength. One must have hope, will, purpose, competence, fidelity, and love in order to take care of that which one cares for. Care is not a duty or obligation, but a natural desire emerging from the conflict between generativity and stagnation, or self-absorption. The antipathy of care is rejectivity, the core pathology of adulthood. The eighth and final stage of development is old age. And the final psychosexual stage is generalized sensuality. A person's final identity crisis is integrity versus despair. At the end of life, the dystonic quality of despair may prevail, but for people with a strong ego identity, who have learned intimacy and who have taken care of both people and things, the syntonic quality of integrity will predominate. Integrity means a feeling of wholeness and coherence, an ability to hold together one's sense of I-ness despite diminishing physical and intellectual powers. Despair literally means to be without hope. The last dystonic quality of life cycle, which is opposite corner from hope, a person's first basic strength. Some amount of despair is natural and necessary for psychological maturity. The inevitable struggle between integrity and despair produces wisdom, the basic strength of old age. Erickson defined wisdom as informed and detached concern with life itself in the face of death itself. Psychohistory. The discipline called psychohistory is a controversial field that combines psychoanalytic concepts with historical methods. Freud originated psychohistory with an investigation of Leonardo da Vinci, and later collaborated with American ambassador William Bullitt to write a book-length psychological study of American President Woodrow Wilson. Erickson defined psychohistory as the study of individual and collective life with the combined methods of psychoanalysis and history. He used psychohistory to demonstrate his fundamental beliefs that each person is a product of his or her historical time and that those historical times are influenced by exceptional leaders experiencing a personal identity conflict.